Nathan. Today, a division bench of the Madras High Court was hearing that matter. They will continue to hear that matter on Monday as well. Now, the critical thing is this. The state government is challenging the order by Justice Swaminathan, even challenging whether there is a Deepathoon, which is basically a literal translation would mean a lamp pillar or the pillar on which the lamp is placed. The state's own archaeological department a few years ago had said that there is indeed a lamp pillar, and that lamp pillar is over 100 years old. It's from the Nayakar era, from the colonial period. Now, the state government's contention is that over the last 100 plus years, yes, this lamp was lit on the auspicious occasion of Kartikeya Deepam, but it was lit at a fixed place and never at the hilltop, which is where Justice Swaminathan's order had said that the lamp should be lit this year. That particular place is very close to a disputed Muslim dargah. So the contention by the state government is, why is this order breaking with convention? Whereas the Hindu side's argument, whether it's the Hindu Munnani, the BJP, others who are all parties to this case, are basically saying that if the Muslim side, the dargah, has no problem and it is a court order, then why should the state government oppose? The matter will continue on Monday, but the big question, which side will the court weigh on? Now, here's how the arguments played out today at the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court. In fact, the Advocate General P.S. Raman, who is appearing for the state government, the DMK government, he argued in court that the Deepam was lit on top of the Uchi Pillayar temple, which is in the Tiruppuram hills. This year, just like it was done last year and in fact for the last 100 years. However, one individual filed a writ petition insisting that the Deepam lighting has to happen at a different place that was identified by this one individual. He called this a private interest writ and not a public interest litigation. The AG of the state also argued that the dispute has given rise to a fundamental question whether there was a Deepathoon, or the pillar that hosts the lamp, whether such a thing exists at all. He also added that the petitioner must first establish that there is a Deepathoon where this lamp has been lit for hundreds of years, as he claims, and only then can the court order such a directive. The lighting of the Deepam on this day of Kartikeya Deepam, which is to celebrate Lord Muruga, is a customary practice. The AG further added that when the temple priests and the temple management had clearly said that the Deepam should be lit only at the Uchi Pillayar temple, the court cannot take a contrary view. Now, in response to this, the arguments that were put forth, Justice Jayachandran, one of the judges who was hearing the matter today, asked, what is wrong in changing the place of the lighting of the Deepam? If it is on top of the hill, then there is better visibility for everyone who is on the ground and everywhere around that area. The Advocate General replied by saying that that cannot be the parameter to change a customary practice that's been in place for decades now. But the bigger question is, this is not just a legal matter, this is also turning political, because remember, the state is barely months away from elections and the Stalin government is also trying to use this to a political end, which is to try and speak to their own vote banks. Now, the question is there a revision of history that is happening on the part of the state or on the part of the petitioner in this case? Now, in a book called Tiruppuram Kundram, written by sculpture research exponent L.J. Bose, which was published by the Tamil Nadu Archaeology Department, which is the department of the state government in 1981, the Deepathoon, which is the pillar that bears the Deepam, the pillar that hosts the Deepam, that is mentioned. This is by the State Archaeological Department, not by the Central Archaeological Survey of India. The book talks about the Deepathoon, which is en route to the top of the hill, which was built during the era of the Nayakars. The Nayakars ruled in Tamil Nadu much before, over 100 years ago during the colonial era. They had declared the Thoon itself belonged to the Nayakar era. On the Thoon, there is a sculpture which depicts Lord Hanuman with one of his arms raised and his face turned towards the left. The sculpture reportedly has writing saying that lamps can be lit on the Thoon, according to this book, adding that it is customary practice for Hindu faithful to light lamps on the Thoon during the month of Kartikeya, and particularly on the day of Kartikeya Deepam. Now, the ripples of this Kartikeya Deepam row were witnessed in Parliament as well today. The matter came up and there were reactions from both sides of the political aisle. Both the BJP and the DMK are digging their heels in because it plays well to their respective political constituencies ahead of a hot political fight that's going to be the state assembly election.
One state in India has become a symbol of anti-Sanatan Dharma. Their ministers are making statements. Against Sanatan Dharma. They objected when Prime Minister was doing his duty for the Ram temple. At that time, the temple doors were shut. People were forced to approach the court to reach the temple. Even now, sir, there are lathis for the devotees. Hindus are lathi charged.
Go for a quick face-off on this. Tuin Sinha, spokesperson of the BJP, is joining us. Selam Dharanidharan is spokesperson of the DMK. Tuin Sinha, the contention by the Advocate General, the advocate representing the state government today in the Madras High Court, was that the Deepam was always lit at the Uchipilayar temple, as has been the case for over 100 years, over 50 meters away from this dargah. He insists that a writ petition was filed by one individual. He called it a private writ petition. It has nothing to do with public interest, asking for that Deepam to be lit in a different place, different from where it had been lit for the last 100 years. The AG saying that this is not a public interest litigation, this is a private interest writ petition. The dispute gives rise to the question whether there is such a thing at all called the Deepathoon. Please respond.
Good evening, Zaka. Good evening, everybody. You know, after the very self-explanatory order of the High Court of the Madras High Court on December 1, allowing for the festival, allowing for the lighting of lamp at Deepathoon, there was absolutely no room for confusion. And this order was also reiterated subsequently on December 5 for the state government to unnecessarily act as hindrance. And, you know, of course, today the matter has reached a level where 120 members of the India Alliance have moved an impeachment motion, which includes, Uddhav Sena. This only shows the anti-Sanatan politics and anti-Sanatan mindset of the India Alliance. Because, like I mentioned right at the very start, the December 1 court judgment was very explicit. There was no room for confusion. And besides, if you look at the history of the DMK in Tamil Nadu, whether it was calling for the desecration of Hindu Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, all of their ministers have been openly, siding with obstructionists over here, which there was absolutely no room for. So in this situation, obviously, we stand with the devotees. The devotees have every right to go ahead. And like I mentioned, what happened subsequently is a matter of grave concern, which is 120 members of parliament calling for impeachment motion,
let me ask Selam Dharanidharan about this. Just because one particular judge has given an order that is not favorable to you, Dharani, you can't move an impeachment motion against that judge. I mean, there are numerous unfavorable judgments that the central government receives, other state governments receive. The answer to that is not to remove the judge. A judge can only be removed either for financial misconduct or any other form of misdemeanor. There is nothing against Justice Swaminathan, and you have got the signatures of 100 plus opposition MPs to remove a judge who's given you one unfavorable judgment.
See, I think this has to be separated from this verdict. So there are three issues in this matter. First is the impeachment process initiated by the party. And second is where the Deepathoon should be lit. And third is the verdict given. The first is, let's come to the impeachment. The impeachment is not just for this verdict, but also how the justice has been bearing in the last 3 years. In fact, way back in 2024, advocate of Madras High Court had already filed a contempt petition against the same justice, or 38-page document. And the same justice, he himself heard his own contempt petition, and 8 retired justice came and said what he's doing is morally wrong. And similarly, my party has submitted a 40-page document to the Chief Justice of India in August. In fact, he's been sharing platforms with the BJP and RSS ideologue, which is not a problem. But in those platforms, he's been ridiculing ideologies opposite to that of BJP. Sitting in the bench, he has called for non-Brahmins are not fit to be.
No, Dharani, I'm asking a simple question. A judge can be impeached only if there is evidence of financial misconduct or any kind of other misdemeanor, sexual, otherwise, etc. Do you have any proof of such behavior by Justice Swaminathan? Just because he has a political ideology or has a point of view, that doesn't make it impeachable.
See, it says, it talks about capacity also, right? So a judge who is not impartial, or rather a judge who is partial. Why is he partial? Because he has a strong ideological bias, cannot have the capacity to deliver right justice. The point to note, for a justice to have any discrimination based on race, creed, culture is not acceptable. When he has that, then how can he deliver proper justice?
No, in this judgment's instance, what was the discrimination? Even the Dargah committee has said. Even the Dargah committee has said that go ahead and light the Deepam on Kartikeya Deepam.
No. I think if you read his report properly, on the page number 7, he says the Dargah committee has no problem. Not page 4, page 7, para 7, he says Dargah committee has no problem. In para 40, he says that the Dargah committee has not accepted. So this discrepancy in his own order. But leave that aside. When I started, I told you, this is not just for this verdict, but because how this justice has been behaving over a period of time. In fact, this same
now
justice
come to the
has told,
lighting.
You're not letting me speak. Zaka, important point.
Okay.
This is very important for my argument, substantial. He has clearly said that the constitution has to be revisited now because the demography of this country has changed. The same justice is there. I can send you the video also. You can play it in your channel. How a justice who doesn't believe in constitution or calls for change in constitution, we don't believe that he can give justice. So don't couple both.
Sir, there have been 100 plus amendments to the constitution. Doesn't mean that all of those amendments are anti-constitutional or the people who move those amendments are anti-constitutional. Anyway, come to the moot point. There has been a judgment that's been given that they can light the Deepam. The Dargah committee does not have a problem. The people of that temple don't have a problem. The locals there, the bhakts there, the faithful there want to light the Deepam, and it's happening on one day, that of Kartikeya Deepam. Why does the state government have a problem?
It is not true. See, each temple in this country is different. There are some temples where you give goats and everything, and some temples are vegetarian, right? So even this temple's culture for the last 200 years, even before Justice Party came into force, the Deepam has been lit only in the Uchipalya temple. Now what is the problem? Why are you creating? The people do not want it. That's wrong. People do not want it. Temple administration does not want it. The devotees do not want it. It is one party which has a template like they did in the 90s in north of India, where they wanted to use religious divide to create communal disharmony and thereby win election. That is the template they want to follow in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Which is why my party did not implement.
Tuhin Sinha, the government's argument is that the court does not have power to issue direction. It cannot be used to change customs, saying that the original plea by one individual, not by a group of individuals, not by the faithful who are praying there, as the DMK spokesperson said, they don't seem to have a problem where it is particularly lit. But one individual moved a private interest writ petition. The Madras High Court has asked today to the State Government's Council, what's the problem in lighting the Deepam where it was lit over the last many hundred years?
Chaka, if the state government has a problem with the decision of the Madras High Court judge, it needs to approach a higher court. It cannot make a random statement that over the last 3 years all of his judgments were flawed and therefore we are moving the impeachment motion. This basically reeks of malified intent. Did they approach a higher court for a stay on the Deepam festival? They did not. They arbitrarily they halted it, which has been a trait of the DMK party. But when it comes to appeasement,
they are not saying stop lighting the lamp. They are saying the place where the lamp is being lit should continue to be the same. It should not be this new place which one petitioner has argued for, which the court has agreed to, which is very close to a disputed dargah. That's the contention. They're not saying don't light the lamp.
No, that again is for community members to decide. That is not for the DMK government. That is not for the state government to decide. If the majority of the Hindu community members feel that that is the present position where it was being lit is the right position, the DMK does not have a right to interfere. Now, coming again to the political point, look at these parties. Mark these parties who have moved the impeachment motion. Samajwadi Party, which has a history of anti-Hindu behavior, whether it was killing the car sevaks. DMK, which has been, shouting left, right and center, warning for the annihilation of Hindu dharma. Uddhav Sena, which over the last few years has taken an openly anti-Hindu position, even opposing the Waqf Amendment Act, and Congress Party, of course, where Rahul Gandhi openly says he's fighting against Shakti. It is the behavior of these parties which makes their conduct seem very, very malified.
Okay.
And obviously, like I said, the only way
Dharani, respond to that. Basically, he's saying that all the India bloc parties are anti-Hindu. The DMK is an anti-Hindu party. Of course, the famous quote of your Deputy Chief Minister saying that Sanatan is like a mosquito and it needs to be extinguished. That's what your Deputy Chief Minister said. They're citing a number of instances where DMK has said anti-Hindu things.
But who is Tuhin Sinha, the BJP or the RSS chief Mohan Bhagat or the Prime Minister to decide who is a Hindu and who is not a Hindu? Who are they representing the Hindu community? No, in Tamil Nadu, BJP standalone, the vote share is less than 4%. Tamil Nadu is 90% Hindu. So are they better representative of the Hindus in Tamil Nadu or the DMK, which has legitimacy of the people? This is very clear. And who says that devotees wanted? No, I'm not saying devotees wanted. In fact, this temple is the example for global example for religious harmony. On the foothills of the same temple, both Hindus and Muslims have shops. In fact, when the Deepam is lit in the Uchipilaya temple, even the Muslim brothers come. I don't think most people who come and speak on the channel on behalf of BJP even know this fact that such religious harmony can exist. Right? So who is the representative for Hindu is the problem? Who is the BJP to call others as anti-Hindu? Have the Hindus given them the mandate?
The same logic can be asked, who is Udaynidhi Stalin to say that Sanatan is like a mosquito and needs to be extinguished?
Yeah, I had been on the same debate for you. I've clearly explained. It's also clarified. I've also written editorial, and the point is, we are not against Hinduism, but we want equality within the Hindu religion, which is why my party brought in a legislation by which we want people of all castes to become priests. To become priest, right? When the former president Ramnath Kovind went to Puri temple, he was not allowed to enter because of his caste. This kind of discrimination, what we are against. When we are speaking against that aspect, was only asking for equality. DMK is not against Hinduism or any religion. My chief minister has made it profoundly clear that we are not against any religion, but we are only
tomorrow, if
against
the High Court, on Monday, if the High Court orders that yes, Justice Swaminathan's order was right and the Deepam needs to be lit, where that order said it should be lit, DMK is okay with it? You just said you're not anti-Hindu, no?
You see, I don't want to deliberate on something that's sub judice. What if anything can happen? If it's also possible the Supreme Court can reprimand G.R. Swaminathan. So I can ask that if they reprimand G.R. Swaminathan, will he resign? So let's not go into the ifs and buts.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it at that. Dhanidharan and Tuhin Sinha, we'll hopefully be in touch with you on Monday. The hearing will continue and hopefully we'll get an order from the division bench of the Madras High Court. I want to move on to the Luthra Brothers. The repatriation of Saurav and Gaurav Luthra from Thailand is now officially underway, marking the very first concrete step towards bringing these nightclub owners back to India. This, of course, in connection with the fire that happened in the nightclub that they owned in Goa, in Arpora, in North Goa, in which 25 people died. The Thailand authorities have now informed that they have detained the brothers in Phuket. They have now taken them to the Bangkok Immigration Office. There they will be handed over to the Indian officials before being flown back to India to face legal proceedings. Now, here's how the Luthra brothers were nabbed. A day after this fire ripped through the high-end Birch by Romeo Lane nightclub in Arpora in Goa, a lookout circular was issued on the very next day. On the 8th of December, it was confirmed that the Luthra brothers were indeed hiding in Phuket in Thailand. Thereafter, a blue corner notice was issued and their passports were suspended. The magistrate issued an impounding order for the passport and the screenshot of that order was shared with the Thai authorities. The duo were then located at a hotel called the Indigo Hotel in Phuket, just outside the city limits. The very next day, which was the 9th of December, the Luthra brothers were spotted by the Thai authorities while they were out for a meal. 2 days later, on the 11th of December, they were detained by officials and the entire deportation process was initiated officially. Now, they've been taken to the Bangkok Immigration Office where they will be held in custody for a couple of days. They will have to be produced in a local Thai court in Bangkok on Monday, which will peruse the documents and issue further orders for them to be deported to India. So what happens next? Upon arrival here in India, they will be formally arrested for culpable homicide not amounting to murder. That's the charge against both the brothers. Once the formal arrest is recorded, then they will be produced before court. The prosecution will present the proof of their complicity before the judge. Then the police will probe for fire safety lapses, licensing lapses, other charges, converting agricultural land into non-agricultural purposes, building this around the coastal regulation zone blocks that were there. They also face, by the way, money laundering charges. There is the allegation, and this is from Delhi police sources, it's also there on the Registrar of Companies website, that more than 40 shell companies on whose director board the names of both the brothers, the Luthra brothers, were there, and all of it traced their address to one address in North Delhi. So all of this will be probed by the authorities. But there are still a number of factors that have come to delay the entire process. They were supposed to be deported by the weekend, but now it looks like it might happen only early next week. So the deportation hurdles are as follows. Remember, their passports were suspended by a magistrate's order. So technically, they are in Thailand and do not have a valid travel document. The passport cancellation triggered their detention in Thailand. The Thai deportation needs court clearance, which will first declare them as illegal because they traveled to Thailand on a travel document which has now been rendered null and void. Legal procedures will then follow in Thailand, which is expected to take at least a couple of days. And remember, courts don't function over the weekend, so the earliest that they can be produced before a court in Bangkok is on Monday. India must then issue an emergency travel certificate, basis which they will then be handed over to the Indian authorities, and either the CBI or whichever the investigating agency is that has gone there, they will then accompany the Luthra brothers on this deportation flight and bring them back to Goa, where they will stand in trial against these charges.
The Immigration Bureau of Bangkok is where the Luthra brothers are now housed. It's in my backdrop. The Immigration Bureau is shut over the weekend, and that is the reason why it is taking time for the Luthra brothers to be taken back to Delhi or perhaps to Goa. So what really has happened over the last 46 hours or so? Exclusive input available with CNN News 18 suggests that the cancellation of passport of the Luthra brothers was a master stroke. It was an advice that was given by the international immigration specialist to the Indian government, and that in a way made it that much more easy for Thai authorities to act. So why was it a master stroke, or why is it being called so? Once the passport was cancelled, the visa that the Thai authorities had issued to Gaurav and Saurav Luthra became meaningless. And because of that visa violation, Thai authorities could move, and that's when they could take the two brothers into custody. Now they are lodged in the Immigration Bureau of Bangkok for that violation. Their visa conditions have been violated. They don't have a valid passport. Because of the weekend shutdown, processing of the documents, completing the legal formalities could take some time. But early next week is when Goa police is hopeful of getting custody. It is still unclear as to who will really escort the team, which team really will escort the Luthra brothers from Bangkok to India. Once the paperwork has been completed by the police, by the immigration authorities here in Bangkok, they will take a call, and then the final roadmap will be clear. So by Monday morning, it is expected that the emergency document based on which the immigration stamp when the Luthras leave Thailand, their passport or their travel document will have to have an immigration stamp that they have exited. That emergency certificate, the Indian authorities are hopeful, will be ready by Monday perhaps, and that will be step 2. Step 1 was cancellation of the passport. Step 2, getting that emergency document ready, would then facilitate deportation of the Luthras from Thailand to India.
Now, amid the ongoing winter session of Parliament, it is witnessing a major smoke vaping row. Now, the first was Trinamool Congress MP Saugata Roy, who reportedly smoked inside the Parliament premises. The incident, which led to a mild reprimand from the other MPs as well as the Speaker, some of the MPs were witness to it. That, of course, blew up into a huge controversy. Then came the vaping controversy. BJP MP Anurag Thakur yesterday told the Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla that a Trinamool Congress MP was allegedly smoking e-cigarettes inside the Lok Sabha for several days. He in fact even filed a written complaint without naming that particular MP. Today, TMC MP Kirti Azad was quick to react to it, saying that there are many others in line to be named too. The problem is vaping is banned in India, and it certainly can't be done inside the temple of democracy, that is the Indian Parliament. Now, while that is the defense of the TMC MP Kirti Azad, he provided that there are at least 100 other MPs who smoke inside Parliament once this complaint came to light. Shougata Roy, the other TMC MP who was accused of smoking, not vaping, he has had a heated exchange with Union Minister Giriraj Singh, and Mr. Roy's defense was that the government must be focusing on pollution and not smoking. Now, while smoking in Parliament is an offence, no doubt about it, the Speaker can initiate a number of actions against these errant TMC MPs. Number one, the Speaker could issue a formal warning or censure for the breach of House decorum. Number two, suspend the concerned MP temporarily for serious rule violations. And number three, if the Speaker is in such a mood, he can send this to the Privileges Committee for full probe. And number four, the committee that is formed can then recommend strict disciplinary action against the errant MP. And lastly, legal action may follow under India's e-cigarette ban law. Like I said, e-cigarettes are banned as per the Cigarettes and Other Tobacco Products Act, and therefore vaping is an illegality in this country.
Well, there was a lot of smoke inside the parliament, but not literally. It all began when Anurag Thakur, the former minister, stood up on the floor of the house and he made a comment that he had seen some Trinamool Congress MPs smoking e-cigarette or vapes. And after that, he issued a 2-page complaint to the Speaker saying that this was completely against the law and there should be a kind of investigation which needs to be done and a sufficient action must be taken against those MPs concerned. But it has now snowballed into a huge controversy. Now remember, in 2019, the Indian government passed a law which has banned manufacture, procurement and obviously smoking of vapes or e-cigarettes. So therefore, if the Trinamool Congress MPs are proved to have been smoking the e-cigarette, then this is clearly breaking the law. Now, according to the law, the first-time offender will face a punishment of 1 lakh rupees as fine and up to 1 year inside jail, and it keeps on increasing. MPs do enjoy certain privileges, but they are also expected to follow the law. Now, the matter is very simple. The complaint has now gone officially to a Speaker. In the 2-page complaint letter, no name has been given. That's very important because this is going to be a part of the investigation, that who were the ones who were caught smoking that e-cigarette. After that, if the CCTV footage is now going to be looked at both inside the Lok Sabha as well as just outside the gallery which leads out of the door, and if the Speaker is satisfied, then those MPs concerned who are found in the scanning of the CCTV footage will be called. Then an explanation will be sought, and after that the Speaker's prerogative, he can let them off easily, or at the most, of course, the legal procedure will be initiated against them. But there was as much of smoke and fire inside as it was outside, because in an exchange of banter which has now taken and serious overtones was Shougata Roy of the Trinamool Congress, who we all know as a chain smoker, and he was being heckled and there was a lot of laughter when many of the ministers asked him, Dada, why do you smoke? But Shougata Roy is unrepentant. He said that so many others do, and the government has not been able to control the pollution, so why are they making such a huge hangama over that one particular cigarette? Well, these are very serious allegations. I'm talking about e-cigarettes because it's about breaking the law. But most importantly, what kind of a message does it send out that our lawmakers have now become the lawbreakers as well? It's not a fit example which is being given to the citizens of the country.
In the wake of the massive disruption in Indigo's flight operations last week, India's aviation regulator, the DGCA, has sacked 4 flight operations inspectors who were all responsible for oversight on Indigo and the airline's preparedness for the new pilot rest and duty duration rules. Now, these FOIs, the flight operations inspectors, engage with the DGCA on a contractual basis. They've been relieved with immediate effect to join their respective parent organizations as per the DGCA's order. But this is again raising some serious questions if the top brass is going scot-free for what has been the biggest man-made crisis in Indian aviation. What is the accountability of the ministry, the DGCA top brass and the Indigo top management, who were all responsible in different measures for the airline crisis that plagued this particular airline and its many lakhs of flyers over the last 4 or 5 days, in fact the last week or so. Now, in terms of action, here is what has happened so far, and it is, you could argue, too little too late. Number one, Indigo has been asked to submit a report on all cancellations, the impact of it, the aftermath of it, and of course the refund status. Also, update the status of the refund processing. Have all passengers been compensated, as well as the future procedure has been sought. Indigo's announced 10,000 rupee vouchers for anyone who was affected in the flights that were cancelled over the last week. The airline is also asked to present recruitment plan for pilots as well as crew. Remember, this entire thing was after the new FDTL rules came in. Indigo is clearly short, at the very least, of 60 crew members and pilots. They will have to amp up that, and they will have to now submit their plans to the DGCA. Already, an 8-member DGCA team is stationed at Indigo's corporate headquarters, and they are monitoring real-time the progress of flights. And number 5, flight safety operations and compliance officials, 4 of them have been sacked so far. The big question: is this enough? A mere 10% curtailment of flight operations, 10,000 rupee air vouchers being given as compensation for those passengers who were affected, and no action on the top brass of DGCA, on the top brass of Indigo, the CEO, the board management, etc. No action against any of these individuals. Are the big fish going scot-free, as it always happens in this country, in case after case after case? So here's what has happened as far as Indigo is concerned. From a peak of 1,600 flights being cancelled exactly a week ago, last Friday, the number of cancellations has surely gone down, no doubt about it. In fact, if you look at the entire graph, from 1,600, it halved to 800 over the weekend, then 650, and then it came to 220, which was 10% of the flights that were cancelled by the central government, by the DGCA. Today, though, exactly a week after this crisis really hit the ceiling, it's only 54 flights that have been cancelled, which is a small number compared to the 2,000 plus flights that Indigo operates on a daily basis.
The last few weeks have not gone very well for the Indigo. Remember, there was this massive issues that were faced by several passengers across the country in which the Indigo flights were cancelled. And since then, there have been several meetings that have happened between the top officials of Indigo with that of DGCA. Now today, a big decision has been taken by the DGCA in which they have gone ahead and removed inspectors who were involved in monitoring and inspecting the Indigo airline. The DGCA feels that it is because of these inspectors and the right report was not given to the authority that Indigo was able to reach a phase where it went ahead and showed its monopoly on the Indian airline system. The manner in which several flights were suspended and people from all across the country had to face severe issues in their immediate travel, this became a massive talking point. Now, after the removal of these inspectors by the DGCA, it is expected that over the next few weeks, more stern and severe action that could be taken by the DGCA, this time not only against the employees of DGCA, but also against the employees of Indigo. Because remember, there is this talk that is happening that this entire issue was artificially made by Indigo to somewhere or the other go ahead and arm twist the government in making sure that the new laws, the FFTL laws that have been made, that could be relaxed, and eventually that was done by the central government, as well as the laws were put on impasse by the DGCA for the time being. Now it is expected that over the next few weeks, as the investigation into this entire incident is still being done, more and more strict action could be taken.
The high-stakes phone call between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump happened yesterday. It came at a critical moment, just hours around the Indo-US teams sitting down for yet another round of trade talks in New Delhi. The moment those trade talks concluded, both leaders spoke on the phone. They affirmed that trade, energy and defense were front and center in the relationship. But that warmth has not melted the ice on a long-pending trade deal. Negotiators have now gone through 5 rounds of discussions. Tariffs are still in place, and once again, both sides are yet to reach a middle ground. But what is really holding the deal back? IT code. This week, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India and President Donald Trump of America spoke on the phone. It was on the same day when the 2-day India-US trade talks ended in Delhi. India says it's made its best ever offer. The US calls India a tough nut to crack. So why hasn't there been a deal yet? And what does this mean for Indo-US relations? Let's try and unpack. On the evening of December 11th, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump spoke via telephone, just right after 2 days of intensive India-US trade negotiations wrapped up in New Delhi. Both leaders called the conversation warm and said that trade, energy and defense were on the table. But despite the optimism on both sides, negotiators left without a breakthrough. America and India have been negotiating a bilateral trade pact to boost market access for American and Indian goods, particularly American farm products into India, while at the same time protecting key sectors of the Indian economy. Trump has slapped India with 50% tariffs, that's the highest for any country. Both sides have had 5 rounds of negotiations so far, but the talks intensified this week in New Delhi with an American delegation led by Deputy US Trade Representative Rick Switzer and the South Asia Trade Rep Brendan Lynch. But just before the meeting began in Delhi, there was an admission on Capitol Hill. India reportedly offered what the US Trade Representative Jameson Greer called the best offer that Washington has received so far. But while praising India's offer, he also called India a tough nut to crack.
There's resistance in India to certain row crops and other meats and products. They're, like you said, they're a very difficult nut to crack. I agree with that 100%.
India exports a significant amount of goods to the United States. In fact, America is India's biggest export market. Whether it's textiles, chemicals, seafood, these are among some of the largest exported items to America. Tariffs on these items have hurt Indian exporters and supply chains have been disrupted. That's why both sides need a deal for relief for exporters. A stalled deal or punitive tariffs strain not just commercial ties but also broader India-US partnership, whether it's in defense cooperation or energy ties. Trade friction could also bleed into strategic paralysis. Already, India is the only country that is being punished with 25% tariffs for importing Russian oil. India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal reacted strongly. He said that if the US is truly happy with India's offer, then Washington should be signing on the dotted line. But New Delhi is also cautious about rushing to a deal.
US is saying that they've got the best deal yet. Have we offered them anything that they are so happy about?
Well, that only the USTR can answer. His happiness is very much welcome, and I do believe that if they are very happy, they should be signing on the dotted line.
So the paradox here is this. American officials say India's offer is the best that's been received yet, but that has not produced an agreement. So then the question is why? Here's why. Number one, there are technical gaps. The US wants concrete reductions in tariff rates. They want guaranteed market access for specific crops like corn, soya, and maize. India wants specific agro safeguards. Then there is political constraints in Washington as well as in Delhi. If trade negotiators sign a text, then the Congress, the US Congress, must approve. Trump's tariffs are already unpopular with the American public. It's raised an affordability crisis. There's also domestic politics in India. Agro and industry lobbies are worried about cheap imports harming Indian farmers and MSMEs. So where do the talks go from here? It could lead to a narrow, phased-out deal, a framework agreement that locks in specific market access and a timeline for tariff reductions. But it has to be signed off by both principals, both Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. That looks more likely now in early 2026 and not before the end of the year. Trump was also due to come to India to attend the Quad summit. That too will now likely happen only in 2026. He would love to make a Trump-style announcement that a trade deal has been achieved while he's in New Delhi. But there is also another layer, Capitol Hill politics. Democrats have voiced sharp criticism of Trump's tariff strategy, warning he risks losing India as an ally and pushing Delhi more towards other powers, namely Russia and China. This week, Democrat lawmaker from California, Sidney Kamlaga Dove, chastised the Trump administration for losing India to tariffs and losing India to Putin. In the background, even as she was speaking, were posters of Modi and Putin.
Trump's policies towards India can only be described as cutting our nose to spite our face. And this is doing real and lasting damage to the strategic trust and mutual understanding between our two countries. Because let me be clear, being a coercive partner has a cost. And this poster is worth 1,000 words. You do not get a Nobel Peace Prize by driving U.S. strategic partners into the arms of our adversaries. We must move with incredible urgency to mitigate the damage that this administration has done to the U.S.-India partnership and return to the cooperation that is essential to U.S. prosperity, security, and global leadership.
Bottom line is this, that Modi and Trump have both signaled a top-level engagement through their phone call, and negotiators in Delhi have put forth what American officials believe is India's best offer ever. Yet, there are technical gaps, there's domestic politics on both sides, and there is rising political heat in Washington, which means that neither side has signed off on the dotted line. The deal may well require another last-mile push. All right, so what is the holdup as far as the India-US trade talks are concerned? By when can we expect a trade deal to be announced? And more importantly, how much of a shadow is this casting on the overall bilateral relationship? In fact, both Prime Minister Modi and President Trump had a phone conversation just yesterday. So we're looking at the possibility of some kind of an announcement on the trade deal maybe in the next few days. I want to go across to a very special guest who's joining us now. Mr. Ian Bremer is the president of the Eurasia Group. Thank you very much, Mr. Bremer. I want to start off by asking you about this phone conversation that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi had. Of course, the talks focused on the two-day India-US trade negotiations that happened. As we know, India and the US have not yet finalized a trade agreement. India's tariff rate remains at 50%, which is among the highest in the world. Where do you think these talks are stuck, and what might it take to finally resolve this issue?
I think that we've been close to an agreement on several occasions now, and President Trump has changed the terms of the deal. He's added things that he wants from India, and that is included most notably the willingness of the Indian government to stop purchasing oil from Russia, and that is in process, actually. There's been some additional terms around India's willingness to purchase military components, jet engines and the like, from the United States. And also there's been talk of a direct summit meeting between Trump and Modi. I feel quite confident that the two sides will get to agreement. I think it is more likely once the newly appointed ambassador, Sergio Gore, gets to Delhi. So we're looking, I think, at a decision that's coming in the first quarter. It's something that's not going to be announced in the next few weeks. But it has proven more challenging than I think both of the countries would have expected when these initial tariffs were announced back on Liberation Day in April.
So where do you think the nub of the problem lies? What exactly is the holdup? What is the issue that's holding up these trade negotiations and this trade arrangement or this trade agreement? And why do you think it's not been resolved yet? Because, as you said earlier, is it because Trump has been shifting the goalposts?
I think that, as I said, there have been several occasions where the sides were close and the United States made additional asks. Now, I think the nub of the issue from the American perspective is we want these things. We're stronger than India. They should be saying yes. From India's perspective, you've got third quarter growth that was over 8%. You've got Modi, who's just been very successful in local elections, including a big win in Bihar. He's quite popular at home. And the Indian economy is not enormously dependent on trade with the United States. It matters, but it's not fundamental as it is for the Mexicans or for the Europeans or even for China. And so in that regard, it is with two very confident leaders who are very aware of how they appear on the global stage as well as to their own populations. There's been less urgency to get to yes than we would have seen, for example, if you're talking to the president of Mexico or the prime minister of Canada or, the premier or the prime minister of the United Kingdom. So I think that's the way I would frame this.
So I do want to ask you about, whether the trade, the stalled trade, agreement is sort of casting its shadow on other areas of the relationship. I want to talk about the bigger picture in the relationship now between India and the US. A few days ago, the Trump administration released what's called the National Security Strategy. And the concern here in India has been that that document refers to India more as a commercial partner rather than a strategic ally. Now, the perception here is that the United States is sort of pulling back from the Indo-Pacific. We did not have the Quad meeting that Trump was supposed to come to India for. He's now expected to come sometime next year, is what we're given to understand. It appears as though, and this is the view from New Delhi, it appears as though Trump has effectively handed over the Indo-Pacific to China. Would that be an accurate sort of assessment? And how would you speak to those concerns?
Well, number one, Trump hasn't read the national security strategy. He's not very interested in that kind of detail. So I wouldn't over-index on the contents. But the points that you raise are certainly true. If I were India, I would be most concerned about the fact that President Trump himself referred to his meeting with Xi Jinping as a G2. And, you know, that clearly means that power and influence matters more than alignment to President Trump. And he's been very, very interested in trying to get to yes with China. And you've seen that on the H200 semiconductors. You've seen it on talk of soybeans. You've seen it on critical minerals, on fentanyl, on a number of other issues. It occupies a lot more of his time and his interest than his relationship with Modi. And the Japanese prime minister, who got out there on Taiwan and made some fairly assertive statements for a Japanese prime minister, quite popular back in Japan, about how it would be existential if there were a Chinese attack on Taiwan and that Japan would need to participate in defense. The President Trump did not stand up publicly to support his ally, Japan. And indeed, on a private phone call, said, you know, you should really calm those tensions down. So, you know, what would that mean for India if there were confrontation on any of a number of issues between India and China going forward? We've already seen this between India and Pakistan, and Trump's personal relations with the Army Chief of Staff in Pakistan, in part because of direct commercial relations between the Pakistani leadership and the Trump family. Those are priorities. And so India has to be a lot more worried, I think, about the level of reliability of U.S. stated policy, U.S. alignment, U.S. strategic partnership with India.
So what do you make of Mr. Putin's visit to India last week? How was it perceived in the United States? I think the last time they met, President Trump even tweeted about it when Putin, Modi and Xi Jinping met in China earlier this year. Some Democrats brought this up during a House hearing earlier this week, suggesting that Trump has lost India to Putin. Is there a sense that the strategic partnership between India and America that was built over the last 25 years is losing direction, or is not so much of a priority for the Trump administration currently? And how do they bring it back on track?
I think there is a feeling that that the U.S.-India relationship is not as front and center for Trump as it was in his first term. He's focused more on the Western Hemisphere, certainly, and you see that around the border. You see that with Mexico. You see it with Venezuela. You see it with 10% of deployed U.S. Naval ships right off the coast. You also see more focus of Trump internally, and that's only going to increase as we get closer to midterm elections and closer to 2028. So that does not surprise me. On India, Russia, there's, you know, a lot more in terms of the symbolism and the warmth of the reception that Putin received from Prime Minister Modi than the substance of the relationship. In fact, I think that the red carpet that was being rolled out is in part to compensate for the weakening of the material elements of the relationship. I mean, as you know, on the military side, India had been pulling away. In part, Russia can barely deliver on the S-400s that India has already ordered because of their own chip shortages, because of supply chain challenges that the Russians have, and the stress of their war economy in Ukraine on everything else that they do. The Indians have already, in practice, reduced their purchasing of Russian oil by about 50 to 70%. Just if you look at the number of tankers that are presently on their way to India from Russia compared to what we've seen in previous quarters. We've got that data, and it's very clear that is a response to American pressure. So if you don't have a lot of money that you can put into the India-Russia relationship, then you want to show respect. And I think that's where Modi was over-indexing, especially because, of course, the hosting of the BRICS next year means that Modi wants to make sure that Putin is happy with India and happy with Modi, so that he's going to be a warm, full participant in that summit meeting. So I think for all of those reasons, we saw a very friendly meeting between Putin and Modi.
Now, 2025 has clearly been a year that's tested the India-US partnership that has been built over the last two and a half decades, from Bush to Obama, even Trump 1.0 and then Biden. There was a strong strategic logic that guided the relationship, which is that if any country can challenge America, it's China, and to manage China's rise, America needs India. Clearly, President Trump in his second term seems to have disrupted that. How do you see the India-US partnership evolving in the next year, 2026?
I think it probably gets a little weaker in the sense that the China relationship is going to be prioritized. There'll be a number of summit meetings, at least two, between Trump and Xi Jinping that are going to take a lot of the oxygen out of geopolitics for other countries. There is a focus on the midterm elections, which right now Trump is not likely to see his party perform well in. He's worried about the state of the economy. But the fact that the Americans are going to have those focuses also mean that they will be more interested in stabilizing their economic relations with other countries. And I think that will help the Indians get to a deal with the United States in the first quarter. So less of a priority, less important, perhaps more lack of reliability on the strategic partnership. But perhaps we do see some progress in the near-term bilaterals on trade.
All right, Mr. Ian Bremmer from the Eurasia Group, thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18. Thank you.
My pleasure.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Salem Dharanidharan about this. Just because one particular judge has given an order that is not favorable to you, Dharani, you can't move an impeachment motion against that judge. I mean, there are numerous unfavorable judgments that the central government receives, other state governments receive. The answer to that is not to remove the judge. A judge can only be removed either for financial misconduct or any other form of misdemeanor. There is nothing against Justice Swaminathan, and you have got the signatures of 100 plus opposition MPs to remove a judge who's given you one unfavorable judgment.
See, I think this has to be separated from this verdict. So there are three issues in this matter. First is the impeachment process initiated by the party, and second is where the Deepathoon should be lit, and third is the verdict given. The first is, let's come to the impeachment. The impeachment is not just for this verdict, but also how the justice has been behaving in the last 3 years. In fact, way back in 2024, advocate of Madras High Court had already filed a contempt petition against the same justice, or 38-page document, and the same justice, he himself heard his own contempt petition, and 8 retired justice came and said what he's doing is morally wrong. And similarly, my party has submitted a 40-page document to the Chief Justice of India in August. In fact, he's been sharing platforms with the BJP and RSS ideologues, which is not a problem. But in those platforms, he's been ridiculing ideologies opposite to that of BJP. Sitting in the bench, he has called for non-Brahmins are not fit to be...
No, Dharani, I'm asking a simple question. A judge can be impeached only if there is evidence of financial misconduct or any kind of other misdemeanor, sexual, otherwise, etc. Do you have any proof of such behavior by Justice Swaminathan? Just because he has a political ideology or has a point of view, that doesn't make it impeachable.
See, he says, he talks about capacity also, right? So a judge who is not impartial, or rather a judge who's partial. Why is he partial? Because he has a strong ideological bias, cannot have the capacity to deliver right justice. The point to note, for a justice to have any discrimination based on race, creed, culture is not acceptable. When he has that, then how can he deliver proper justice?
No,
That's
no.
the point.
In this judgment's instance, what was the discrimination? Even the Dargah committee has said. Even the Dargah committee has said that go ahead and light the Deepam on Kartikeya Deepam.
No. I think if you read his report properly, on the page number 7, he says the Dargah committee has no problem. Not page 4, page 7, para 7, he says Dargah committee has no problem. In para 40, he says that the Dargah committee has not accepted. So this discrepancy in his own order. But leave that aside. When I started, I told you this is not just for this verdict, but because how this justice has been behaving over a period of time. In fact, this same
now
justice
come to the
has told,
lighting.
You're not letting me speak. Zaka, important point.
Okay.
This is very important for my argument, substantial. He has clearly said that the constitution has to be revisited now because the demography of this country has changed. The same justice is there. I can send you the video also. You can play it in your channel. How a justice who doesn't believe in constitution or calls for change in constitution, we don't believe that he can give justice. So don't couple both. If you
Sir, there have been 100 plus amendments to the constitution. Doesn't mean that all of those amendments are anti-constitutional or the people who move those amendments are anti-constitutional. Anyway, come to the moot point. There has been a judgment that's been given that they can light the Deepam. The Dargah committee does not have a problem. The people of that temple don't have a problem. The locals there, the bhakts there, the faithful there want to light the Deepam, and it's happening on one day, that of Kartikeya Deepam. Why does the state government have a problem?
It is not true. See, each temple in this country is different. There are some temples where you give goats and everything, and some temples are vegetarian, right? So even this temple's culture for the last 200 years, even before Justice Party came into force, the Deepam has been lit only in the Uchipalya temple. Now what is the problem? Why are you creating? The people do not want it. That's wrong. People do not want it. Temple administration does not want it. The devotees do not want it. It is one party which has a template like they did in the 90s in north of India, where they wanted to use religious divide to create communal disharmony and thereby win election. That is the template they want to follow in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Which is why my party did not implement.
Tuhin Sinha, the government's argument is that the court does not have power to issue direction. It cannot be used to change customs, saying that the original plea by one individual, not by a group of individuals, not by the faithful who are praying there, as the DMK spokesperson said, they don't seem to have a problem where it is particularly lit. But one individual moved a private interest writ petition. The Madras High Court has asked today to the State Government's Council, what's the problem in lighting the Deepam where it was lit over the last many hundred years?
Chaka, if the state government has a problem with the decision of the Madras High Court judge, it needs to approach a higher court. It cannot make a random statement that over the last 3 years all of his judgments were flawed and therefore we are moving the impeachment motion. This basically reeks of malified intent. Did they approach a higher court for a stay on the Deepam festival? They did not. They arbitrarily they halted it, which has been a trait of the DMK party. But when it comes to
they are not saying stop lighting the lamp. They are saying the place where the lamp is being lit should continue to be the same. It should not be this new place which one petitioner has argued for, which the court has agreed to, which is very close to a disputed dargah. That's the contention. They're not saying don't light the lamp.
No, that again is for community members to decide. That is not for the DMK government. That is not for the state government to decide. If the majority of the Hindu community members feel that is the present position where it was being lit is the right position, the DMK does not have a right to interfere. Now, coming again to the political point, look at these parties. Mark these parties who have moved the impeachment motion. Samajwadi Party, which has a history of anti-Hindu behavior, whether it was killing the car sevaks. DMK, which has been, shouting left, right and center, warning